doing switches, a little bit of a deeper dive on it before we get into bridges and how they're created. 'Cause I do want to go through switches again. And I'm just going to kind of free ball this one for switches version 2 and just talk about some of the things that I see on the chart and then what I would expect. Because I think that's a big part of switches is not only marking up the charts, but also kind of having those expectations. Like we always do this. And, first at first glance, inverse level here is not going to be created for another 8 hours. So likely nothing here. The day prior, getting underneath this, over top of this stuff here, changing the bit of the architecture today, I would just look at this one and I would just kind of keep going down here. Obviously we just hit a 4 hour. So that's kind of your number one starting point when you're starting to think about switches, is creating kind of your expectations top and bottom, right? So you hit this 4 hour origin, you go down to the +1 -1, which is the hourly. We were looking in this moment here, back here, we go back to this replay. We were looking for the time frame that could gap the range. So when we were up here looking at all this information, the reason we target the 4 hour here and not the 1 hour is because, and we went through this last time, but we'll go through it again as a recap. If you're targeting the 1 hour level, what's going to happen is you're going to be looking for the 15-minute. Now, it would be different if this 4 hour level was never here, because it does target the 4 hour level at the same time. So it does complete that same thing. But if you were to have a move down here, you kind of have to gap timeframes. So the first thing about the bridge and the switch is that you need to make those adjustments while you're looking at these trades. Like even if we winded it back to here, we were expecting an instant burst up. And in this moment, if you were targeting the hourly and you were right here in the trade, you would be going down to the 15 and you'd be saying, okay, well, we need to gain this 15 because it's going to hit the hourly. The +1 -1 is the 15. So there's not much to gap there. So like instead of doing that, you're starting to target the hourly timeframes. So your hourly would be here or even here. So the range is starting to expand as you're increasing your time frame. So that's kind of the thing about switches and bridges, where you're going to see where you need to target and how far something can go due to the switch, right? So like the switch in this trade, all of a sudden you see, well, here's the 15-minute right here. The range is very, very simple in front of your face. Switch it to an hourly. Look how much you gain in that range. It goes all the way down to here. So 29 to 269 all the way down to 28.8. And that's why we use that 4 hour there, is because that 4 hour can gap the time frame. And then even here, if you wanted to gap the 4 hour, which would be a backside right here, which actually you'd be starting to go down into this range here on the 4 hour, because this kind of combo range would already it would already exist right here, right? Like you'd already have the 4 hour you're trying to gain. Off hitting that, you gain this, which is the backside here. You're already starting to go down to the next range because your hourly here that you're targeting is anyways, it's below this and it's still part of that. So you kind of just use that 4 hour there, brings you into that next range. And then you could go to the daily and say, well, I want to target a 4 hour. So that daily is where you could go and you could say, okay, well, let's target that 4 hour. And then so the daily is even hit there too, that daily trend, which even exposes the range even more. So then you would just kind of delete that stuff and seeing the highest time frame that got touched and tested. And that gives you your -1, which is your 4 hour down here, and your 4 hour hold, your 1 hour level. And that's how you're using +1 -1 to start gapping these time frames, and why we use this here, this hourly level. That's why we use that, because when you're creating these switches, the more time that's going on, the more you're expanding and contracting ranges. So as seen here in this example, and let's put this 4 hour back too, and this 1 hour, just because we want to know that kind of all time frames are hit, the combos were all executed, et cetera, et cetera. It hits the biggest time frame. That switch gets created on the daily. When you hit this time frame in this moment, you can clearly see, like, if you hit this daily, you're going to start exposing your range down into here, and then again down into that, because the daily is going to go for your -1. So that's really one of the big things that you want to do when you're using bridges and switches and +1 -1 together, is you want to start seeing what got targeted, and those bigger time frames allow you to see the switch and how far it's going to go. So that's why we just delete those levels here, delete this one, delete this one. That's why when we hit this 4 hour, we can target that hourly down there, because it's in that next part of the range that is decided from this daily. So you're kind of using combination levels in conjunction with +1 -1. So that's just to kind of catch up on that part of it. But let's actually go and do some examples of switches and kind of what we could expect in this moment here today going forward, or just, what we would see on the chart. So again, we've hit the daily. So we know that the +1, -1 exists down here. We've hit the daily. We've got nothing on the 4-hour here. Sure, we've held it and hit this 4-hour level and, this one here, and that's fine. This was already tested before going there. So it's not going to be this. It's going to drop to the range down here. You've got, your whatever hold level here. You've got your hourly here. That's fine. It never actually tests this 4-hour. So like, I think that's the first big switch you need to make, because when you're in this moment, we did expect it to hit this hourly, and that's fine. It did, but it never actually goes for the time frame below it. When you hit this here, you are actually saying, like, I do want to go after this. This technically isn't hit, this front side. This back side is hit. This range is already kind of exposed. You hit the 4-hour combo to the 1. That's fine. You never really target this. So I do still think you're moving up on the top side. And then you're using your switches to see what's happening from that moment forward, right? So in this moment, you're expecting kind of a switch to be made. I wouldn't even say a switch yet. I think you have to start doing things like this, like closing these bigger time frame candles like that. And trend on the bottom isn't hit yet, so that's perfectly fine. I think every 4-hour that goes by, you have to be aware that you're creating these scenarios. Like when this had hit this bottom here, like this, when this hits this bottom, what you're really, really looking for is to either ladder off of this, right? Or, because that would be your target right now. You'd be saying, okay, you hit this top, you need to ladder off this next. And then you can even, start getting into your combo levels and going for your hourlies and, your 4 hours here. So maybe you could combo to this right here as it's untested. That's perfectly fine. You could combo to that. And so that's good. You have like all those combo levels, but going back to this 4-hour, I think the first thing you're looking for here, like that's the expectation. You hit this, you go for the 4, possibly combo to this, you keep laddering down. I think one of the switches that need to be made here are the moment you gain one of these inverse candles, I think is a pretty big moment, right? So like, let's take a look at what happens. Nothing there. Fine, you're still moving up. You've got a little bit of a bridge and switch that's happening here. You gain this front side, right? So I don't quite think you're there yet on this move, because you do need to gain that backside. And right now you're not gaining any of these levels here, so you're not really moving down. So there's not really anything to be made in terms of a switch right now. You just have your kind of static expectation that you'd move up to this 4, push this combo 1 possibly, and then move down. But in this moment here, this, the second that this starts to create, I think it tried to do it right here, and you have, backside right here, and that's great. And you had the front side here, and it did temporarily gain it, but that's fine. It's a little too intermediary, and you do have other levels. I'm sure if you went down into these time frames, you'd see, hey, you've got an hourly test there. You lost this one. Maybe you're laddering this now. Like, you're going to see smaller time frames doing things. This is not a lot of time in the charts yet to be saying, 2 candles up, and you really need to kind of develop a little bit more there. But if you're going to lose this 4-hour, you're probably going to need to create an origin inside of this chart somewhere, which you have, right? You have, like, you've got a 1-hour backside there, didn't get, you've got one here, and you're starting to create that origin. So the second you lose this, I think you're actually just losing the entire move. So that's a switch that was made in this move. So let's go over that again real quick. You've got backside 4-hour, right? Go to the 1. You haven't created any kind of origins yet, but you have created one here right now. So I think this is really polarizing that move right now. I think you've got, go to the bigger view of this move. I think you've got a very clear switch that's happening here, because this is going to create that resistance. So like, once you start hard closing that hourly time frame underneath this, I think you immediately put that switch into play. You delete this, and you're really just trying to short the retouch of this, right? You're trying to come here and it comes down. You're really trying to take that reshort before it dumps down completely. So I think that's kind of a defined polarity moment right now. Put these other 2 levels back on. I think this is the polarity right now in this trade, is this level here. You have to stay above it. You might be able to ladder this one here. It is still a ladder, but I don't really like it. I just kind of like the idea of losing this move and then back testing this to dump. So that's like a clear switch that's going to be made. Right now it's just in play, but there's no switch. I think you're still looking to short right here, or possibly even go after the combo level. But really, when you get below this, I think these instantly delete off the chart. That switch is made. You're killing this. The 4-hour can stay, because the 4-hour can show you the ladder point. you don't have any floats in play. You have a small float right here. So like this tip right here, ladders to this, and that's fine. That's exactly what we were talking about last time, and that bridge and switch being made. As long as it ladders under this, it is going to target that lower range, which it did. And then right now, the only kind of piece to consider is you potentially have an interior float here, which means that you have that 4-hour level there. So when you kind of go back into this and you're marking your levels, I think that's a pretty important one to have, because I think you have two forms that can hold this chart down. I think you have this 4-hour and you have this polarity right there. So I really think that's kind of your Pandora's box right there. And then you're going to create some maybe interior trends off of it. But the moment you go under this, you just kill this stuff here. You just delete that. Yeah, very, very simple actually. Maybe. Let's just say maybe, and let's go take a look at the 4-hour time frame here. Yeah, no, this is still outside of that hourly, so we wouldn't use that as a combo level. I think if you hit this level, you can expect to lose this right here. So we're going to add that 4-hour level because this still is a ladder float, but everything here right now looks like hardcore distribution, in my opinion. You've got a 4-hour level that will activate this float to move the trade down. I think you've got an hourly level that targets this polarity right here. And if you never reach any of that, I think maybe you can establish a hold on this move. Got this right here. That's already tested. That's tested. It's tested. It's not tested. Let's see the hourly. Yeah, you've just got to, I think if you go straight down right now, you can long this because you haven't really hit your targets up top. You can long this with the idea of if you hit this and you can't get over it, you just instantly exit the trade. But I do think this is a not bad long, or maybe you even want to go a little greedier and take this right here. But then again, the polarity kind of like once you lose that, you're killing this level here. You're killing this level here, right? Like that bridge and switch kills those levels. So the second you get under this, you can have targets on the bottom and that's perfectly fine. But your targets on the bottom and the trades that happen and pan out as you would hit this, right? You kind of go down, whether it be here, whether it be this, it doesn't matter. The second this shows you resistance, like the trade is over anyway. So that's anyways, that's your switch right there, right? Like that's the switch. When you get underneath that, then you're no longer targeting these upper ranges. As long as you're staying above this, you are targeting those upper ranges to stay on the chart. So that's like a really interesting switch that can happen in this move right now. And yeah, it's really derived by this. And if you continue to hit this and hold this, I would expect you to probably push even maybe a combo range up top. Like I would expect you maybe even to push something like this right here, which would be likely a 15-minute derived from here, right? So you've got that there. Never back test it, but it does go below it and test that level. So actually, maybe I wouldn't use the 15 because it looks like this is already tested. Front side is tested there. That's a combo there. It's broken on the hourly. So actually you have to go back to the hourly and you have to start right here and find the 15 inside of this. Right here. Like that. So if you bounce this move, right? Now you've got the idea that you could go here, go here, you go here, you go here, right? So that's a switch that's going to be made. The second you get below this, you're killing this, and don't even think you can really go up here. Maybe at best you kill that as well. You possibly have a range trend here, depending on how long things take to develop. You possibly have a range trend there or an interior trend like that. You won't have the 4-hour, can't be. So it can only be the hourly, which is fine. So yeah, I think that's the adjustment you make. You add your trend here, you're staying below this, and that's it. Like it's as simple as that. You can long this level. I don't think I would. I think I would more long trend to see if it can hold trend. But the second you start getting, resistance here, out of the trade, resistance here, out of the trade, resistance here, out of the trade. It's or you can create a trend like this, and if you're hitting all these resistances, then you create your trend, like you're staircasing 1, 2, 3. The second you lose this, you got to get out of the trade. So it's really interesting that this level right here, right in the middle of the charts, between two worlds, between this side of the charts, which has all of those expectations. And then if you stay above that level there, you know, you're up in this range here. You have an even higher range that's just, you know, something that will give you a completely different set of targets. So same chart, same range, because from an outline perspective, let's delete these for a second. And this is where it gets kind of cool, because you can have the exact same chart. Oopsies, not that one. You can have the exact same chart, the exact same range, where you'd be like, oh, here's the range. Completely different set of cues that are being split right down the middle in this chart by one level, which is this guy right here, this one right here. Stay above it. And again, those same things we described. But anyways, the point being is right inside the middle of your range, between the top wick and the bottom wick, inside this interior range, you have two completely different outcomes that can happen. So this is like your switch in action, where you have one defined moment that will completely flip what the chart will show you, and what that kind of shorts or longs, or, you know, trigger points, all of the above, anything you can think of, it changes drastically depending on what happens with this point of polarity. So this is cool because, you know, switches always have this point of polarity, and that's what they are. It's like when you have a 4-hour candle and you get underneath the body of it or over top of the body of it to gain that level or to lose that level, that's a moment where that switch activates, right? And here is the polarity. If you stay over top of it, right, you have that, you know, that switch hasn't happened yet and you still have the same expectation. So all these levels that we have marked, we still have marked, right? But the second you get below that, it's like, oh, it's completely different scenario. I'm not saying you're breaking down like that. I'm saying that, you know, your targets change completely. So it's like one moment that flips a switch in the charts.